So we take 1, 2, 3 forwards, and then we put it together and we create a new word. And I brought you some of the nicest words. Datenschutzbeauftragter, Auskunftsersuchen und Datenschutzgrundverordnung. These are the words that Germans have to work with when they want to comply with data privacy. So the first one is a privacy officer. Every German company has to have that has more than 20 employees has to have a privacy officer. The second one is request for information. Basically allows every consumer to request all the information that a company has stored about them, has collected. So in the early beginnings of the GDPR, actually consumers wrote messages to Facebook, and they literally printed out thousands of pages because they had to fulfill this request and give them information, all the data that they collected. It's pretty crazy. And the last one is the General Data Protection Regulation, short GDPR. You might have heard about it if you market in Europe as well. It took effect in 2018 and had a big impact on the whole industry and how companies handle data and how marketers were able to process data and target customers. So why am I telling you all of this? Why am I telling you about Europe and data privacy there and German? Well, in the end, Europe is a bit ahead when it comes to data privacy regulations compared to North America. And 2 or 3 years back, when I was talking to people in North America about data privacy, nobody really cared here. They're saying, well, we don't do that. We don't need that. Nobody cares about it. And it was true, while in Europe, we had to be very careful with that. But nowadays, things are really turning around, even in North America, and things are changing. And we're going really through a shift when it comes to data privacy in North America. So what happened? What happened? What led to this shift? And what is the shift that I'm talking about? Well, let's recap quickly. And you mentioned we're going to talk about data privacy, iOS, Apple. This is the first thing that happened. 2 major tech companies really changed the game last year. First, Apple. Apple introduced app tracking transparency. And if you have an iPhone or an iPad, you've probably seen the screen that you have on the right here. So it basically asks you if you're okay with being tracked by a third party across your web activity and your app activity.
Okay, thank you.
And it's the first time somebody asked me that. As a consumer, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know this was happening in the background. Do I want it? Well, the answer for most people is no, I don't want this. Once they have the choice, about 80% of customers actually opted out of this, right? Opted out of app tracking. There's different numbers, but between 75 and 85%, that's probably the numbers. So basically, the summary is if consumers know what's happening to their data and they disagree with that, and they have the chance to opt out, the vast majority, 4 out of 5, will opt out, right? So it's a big change that Apple introduced, and I'm sure some of you had to handle some of the repercussions from that and overcome these challenges already. Second big thing that happened is that Google introduced a similar mechanism, which they called Flock First, Federated Learning of Cohorts. Then they renamed it to Topics later. And the idea is to get rid of third-party cookies. Third-party cookies are able to basically track all your web activity across different pages. So Facebook knows if I'm on website A, B, and so on, even though I never really knew about this, and I didn't really opt in. So getting rid of third-party cookies is definitely a move into data privacy, and it's kind of surprising that Google is doing that, but of course they bring a solution as well, and their solution is, well, we're not going to track you on an individual basis anymore. We won't be able to target you directly, but we're going to put you in categories. So there's up to 300 different topics or categories of interest, and you'll be put into these, and you, as a marketer, the good news is you can still target by these interests and still, personalize and target relatively well, and as a user, at least my data is anonymized, and nobody can track me individually anymore. So it's a step into the right direction, I would say. Not as far, obviously, as Apple went, but for Google, it's a big step forward. And both Apple and Google are doing that because there was a lot of pressure from regulators, but also pressure from end consumers, and things are really changing. So why should you care? I mean, some of you, or most of you, probably heard about these changes already. Some of you have probably handled this already and found workarounds for it. Others might not have. So let's just, the obvious things for marketers, why it's actually bad for marketers in a way, is because campaign tracking has become much more difficult. Campaign tracking, personalization, targeting is all much more difficult now with less data available and stricter data privacy policies. So overall, your marketing efficiency will suffer. So this is it's an important topic as a marketer to look into. The problem with that is it's not a temporary thing. These companies, the move that they're doing, Apple and Google and others to follow, it's a paradigm shift that we're seeing now. And you can see that in surveys. We had a survey, we asked consumers how concerned they are with data privacy, and 82% of consumers said they're now more concerned with data privacy than before the pandemic. And we had some abuse, some scandals in data privacy, leaks, and so on. So it's really not a surprise, I think, from my standpoint. And during the pandemic, of course, a lot of people moved online and provide a lot of data as well, and are more aware now. So as a marketer, you have to remember this is going to stay. It's permanent change. Consumers' behavior and expectations has changed over the last 2 years, and it's here to stay, and it's only going to get more data privacy, and that's, in a way, it's a challenge as a marketer, of course. All right, so not only here to present the problem, but also, of course, to talk a bit about the solution and what we can do about it, and still have successful campaigns, still increase conversion, still collect data as well. So the good news is it's not all bad. The same survey that we had, 78% of consumers said they are willing to share data if they know it's not abused, if it's treated well, if they know what the data is used for, if it's not sold to another company. So vast majority of people, 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5 are willing to share data if it's not sold. And 68% of consumers said, if there is some kind of benefit for me, then I'm also willing to share data. In our case, for example, discounts or promotions that have an immediate impact, of course. Well, yeah, it's an exchange. It's a win-win. I give you my data, but in exchange, I get something back from the company. So this is the good news. But like I said, it's a big shift in society. So the first thing we have to do as a marketer to think about this, and I mean, we have this data that I just presented, but we also saw the data from Apple where a lot of people opted out. So you have to keep that in mind. And the first thing you have to tackle is really to think about your own mindset. And the most important thing is be transparent and explain why you're collecting data, what are you using it for, and what's in it for the customer. That's super important. This is what consumers expect nowadays. I want to know what happens to my data. Why am I sharing this? What are you doing with it? And what's in it for me? Then give consumers access to their own data. For example, through a preference center where you can click on and then you see all the data that the company is handling for me. Let them edit it themselves. Let them delete data. Let them add data. It's also important. We'll talk about that in a second. And let them opt out. For example, email marketing is super easy to opt out, of course, but also in other channels that's possible. And big no-go, don't collect any data without disclosing it. And you don't want to end up as a second, what's that name? Cambridge Analytica, right? You don't want to end up like them where all of a sudden your customers find out that you've used data for something, or you've sold their data without they knowing. That's the PR disaster, right? Don't do that. So how can you collect data nowadays? Well, there's one solution that I want to share with you, and you might not have heard of it. It's called zero-party data. And you probably know what third-party data is. You probably know what first-party data is. Zero-party data is data that customers share proactively and intentionally with you. So that might be their interests, or how you want to address them, or other characteristics that the user really wants to share with you. And I have a really, really nice example for that, and I wanted to show you that. This is the Yelp app. And I hope you can see it. It's a little small, maybe from the back. I'll try to explain it. On the very left, you see the Yelp preference center. So users of Yelp get the screen, and they can fill it out, but they can also skip it. It asks about dietary restrictions, it asks about lifestyle, and about accessibility. And on top, they have a little text that says, tell us more about you. Don't worry, anything you skip won't disappear from Yelp. We'll just prioritize the preferences you select. And on the top right, there's a learn more. I think they could even do a better job, but it's already pretty good. They're telling you why you should fill this out. They'll prioritize content for you. They're telling you you can skip it as well. You don't have to fill it out. And if you're really interested what happens here, you can always click the learn more button. And once you fill it out and you provide the zero-party data as a user, you see on the second and the third screen, the middle and the right screen, what Yelp does with it. It personalizes the user experience really well. In the middle, you see for you, picks for you, and on the right, you see the personalized content. In this case, the user selects that he or she is pescatarian and is looking for something kid-friendly. So in a way, it's really a win-win. For Yelp, they get more information about their users. They know really well who's their audience. They can speak to them really well. They can send push notifications targeted. And for the user, it's a win because the content is highly relevant, highly personalized, and I don't have to scroll through thousands of restaurants or places to find the one that I'm actually interested in. Instead, the AI is doing that in the background. It's super, super convenient for me. So that's a really great example of how to use zero-party data. So if you want to collect zero-party data, what are the channels that you can use? And let's talk about that in a bit. So the first one is pretty obvious, and that's pretty much what I just showed you. It's your own channel, your website, your app, your service, wherever you have a personal touch point or any channel that you control on your own. That's the best way to collect this kind of data. The second one is email marketing. Email marketing, and we talked about this just in the presentation before, and I think it was mentioned earlier today as well. It's still a channel that's performing really well. For every dollar you invest in email marketing, you get $40 back on average as a return on investment. It's pretty strong, right? And I've been in email marketing and I've been told email marketing is dead so many times. But it's coming back now, and one of the reasons is that there's no big tech player behind it. There's no Apple, there's no Facebook or Meta, there's no Google behind it that can control this channel because it's an open protocol, so anybody can use email. And that's that very compelling reason why you can still trust emails and why it's very democratized in a way. And in email, there's an opt-out option usually. Implementing a preference center is quite easy as well, and it's a really strong tool to use. And even when you sign up, there are some really nice examples of collecting data, zero first-party data, right in the sign-up process as well. And the third one is a little different. It's conversational marketing. So, for example, if you have a chat box on your website, you have a one-on-one conversation, and you've seen that probably yourself. Chatbots ask you for some information. You can do that fully automated, or you can do it in a one-on-one as well, and save that information and really provide a very targeted, very tailored experience for the customer that you're actually talking to. So conversational marketing is a great tool, even if you use a third party like Instagram or Facebook Messenger, you can still collect this data and save it in your own tools. Third parties overall, of course, they're still important, but my suggestion from a data privacy standpoint is don't rely too much on them. There might be changes coming to other big third-party channels in the future. All right, so let's recap for a moment. So if you go home today and you think back about data privacy and you dream about data privacy, then these are the 3 key takeaways that I want you to remember. First up, be transparent, communicate proactively, be transparent and honest. Your customers will value this. Explain why you're collecting data, what you're doing with the data, and what's in it for the customer. That's super important. Second, let users control and manage their data. So give them access to their data, let them manage it, let them add zero-party data, let them edit it, and also let them opt out or remove data. And last but not least, use own channels that you control fully, or open protocol or open channels like email marketing. This way, you have less dependency in any kind of event. And overall, always remember, these big changes are always an opportunity as well. Like Apple, who is part of this movement, they basically made it their unique selling position now. They're really keen on data privacy, and they're supporting data privacy. And as a consumer, I like that. This is why some of us actually buy Apple products now. And you can do the same. If you're even if you're in marketing and you communicate really well, like Patagonia, right? Just on a data privacy level, it's in a way it also goes into this ESG narrative. So always remember that with challenges, there's always opportunity as well. And you can turn a weakness into a strength. So always remember that, try to turn around, take that challenge, and use it for your advantage. And that's it from my side. I'm happy to answer a couple of questions as well on a little Q&A. I also have some more information if you want. If you want some information on Sendinblue, visit our website, sendinblue.com, or scan the QR code. We have a really good book on retention and loyalty if you're interested. I can highly recommend this ebook. And if you want to connect with me, I'll also stay here for a couple more minutes after the talk. Reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, or talk to me after. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Or does everybody want to go home? Yeah.
Hi. So I am going to ask a question just that I've been curious about, and I'm hoping specifically you might know, because you referenced the general data policy, essentially the equivalent of CASL in the EU and Europe. And I do believe it says if you market in Europe, you must comply to the information request. I market in Canada. I actually have like a 75-kilometer radius in which I can market within based on NHL standards. And we received a request from someone in Europe, essentially saying that we had to provide all the information about how and data that we collect on people because we have a website, which means that we market in Europe. So I was wondering if you had any information on details on whether this having a website means that we market in Europe and do have to comply to the other countries' data protection standards.
Yeah, it's tricky, and I'm not a legal counsel, so probably a better topic for them. As I understand, if you market to European customers, which I don't know if that was the case in your case, you should comply with GDPR in Europe. But you would have to look at this case by case. But yeah, it's definitely something to consider. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah. When you say not to rely on third party, and I'm not asking you to, say don't use, but is that like, would you recommend using something like MailChimp, which is open, or like use?
So I was talking about the channels.
Yeah.
Channel, I mean like Facebook ads, for example, right? That's a channel. I wasn't talking about like a tool that enables you to use one of these channels, and there's thousands of them out there. The beauty of email marketing in particular is that the protocol is open. Anybody, you can send an email from Outlook or Gmail, or you can use a MailChimp or a Sendinblue to send emails. And nobody can really do anything about it, right? That's the beauty. But if you want to book Facebook ads, you have to go through Facebook, and that's basically the problem. That's a third-party dependency that I'm talking about. All right.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Given whatever you had mentioned, looks as though still the best combination is that of a smart email marketing strategy and a powerful website of your own. I think that by and large addresses the issue of data privacy, by and large. Because when you talk of any of the other platforms, let's say Facebook or LinkedIn, there are clear vulnerabilities. I mean, they may claim whatever. So, do you think that taking the conventional route of digital marketing, where we just base ourselves on a captive website and a good email marketing strategy, would that be a sound combination?
Well, yeah. I mean, in a way, it's the basics, right? But you always have to remember that you can also improve on these basics. And the reason why I said it is because from a data privacy standpoint, this is the least dependent you can be, and you can control these channels. And we don't know exactly what's going to happen with these tech players in the future, right? No, but by no means am I saying you should only use your website and email marketing. No, use the other channels. Just keep in mind, be aware that there might be policies in the future that have an impact, and that you're not the one that controls this channel. You're not in charge. You're not controlling the data through it. And in the end, you're very dependent on these third parties. And that's why I'm saying, try not to rely too much on that, because in the end, you're super dependent.
Because for all you know, tomorrow one of these social platforms may just evaporate into thin air. And what do you do with all the data, right?
Yeah, or I mean, they can determine the prices as well. They can change their rules. They can ban you, right? There's a high dependency on that. And you saw that even with Meta or Facebook, once Apple introduced these policy changes to iOS, they suffered big time. Even the big company like Facebook had a high dependency like this. And so it's something to keep in mind, something to consider. And in the light of data privacy changes, I think it's an important topic.
Thank you.
All right, well then, let's wrap up. Thank you so much.